Hello and welcome to Commander Escape. I'm your host for the day, Dan, and I thought I'd go through another deck list that came up as of the result of the murders of Karloff Manor. I did mention in my previous video that I was thinking about Goblin Storm, and I built it! I have built it. So for today we're going to go through a deck list once again, as the normal novelty on this channel. So, we're just going to go through our commander deck list for Krenko, the Baron of Tin Street. A 3-drop, 3/3 with haste, with the ability of sacrifice an artifact after tapping it, put a +1/+1 counter on each goblin you control, and whenever an artifact enters the graveyard from battlefield, you may be red. If you do, create a red 1/1 goblin token, it gains haste until end of turn. So yeah, our commander, we're going to be trying to make goblins, as you can see, mono red. We're going to try and abuse that sort of interaction between the counters and obviously artifacts going to the bin. So cards I did mention in the previous video will be heavily involved in this one. Let's just go through the list. We'll try and not be too long because, like I say, we're all busy people. So we'll just go straight through. So we're going to run in one Planeswalker, which is Durati Scrap Servant. It is a 4-drop for 3 loyalty Planeswalker with a +2 that says discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. Pretty solid. -2, sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return target artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exactly what we want in our sort of artifact strategy. -10, you get an emblem. Whenever an artifact is put in your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So we're not losing our artifacts, especially impactful ones we want. So let's just move on. Right. We're running 8 sorceries, we'll just go through them. So there's the classic Blasphemous Act, which is normally a 9-drop sorcery, which is reduction for each creature in play on the battlefield. It deals 13 damage to each creature on the battlefield. We all know what a Blasphemous Act does. It's a great card. Next one we're going to do is one of the Storm cards I mentioned, or would have mentioned in the previous video, is Empty the Warrens, which is a 4-drop, 3 miscellaneous and a red. It says put 2 red 1/1 goblin tokens on the battlefield into play. Storm. So obviously the Storm counters, we're trying to get as many artifacts or spells off the cuff so we can get as many goblins as possible. Kind of explains what it says on the card. And then we've got Goblin Warstrike, which is 1 red for a sorcery. Goblin Warstrike deals damage equal to the number of goblins you control to target player. So a bit of target player removal with a little bit of goblins, especially if we've obviously got a lot of goblins on field, which we're going to be aiming to do so. Jeskai's Will, which is a 3-drop sorcery. Choose one. If you control your commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both. You can have a red mana for each card in target opponent's hand, or exile top 3 cards of your library, play them this turn. So yeah, with our Storm point, we're trying to make sure that obviously that happens as much as possible. So cards like this will add to that and obviously make sure that we have more red mana to do more things. The classic Krenko's command, which is a miscellaneous and a red, create 2 1/1 goblin creature tokens. Self-explanatory what it does. A Catholic Rebirth, which is similar to the other ones we're creating tokens. So this is a red drop. As additional cost to casting Catholic Rebirth to sacrifice an artifact and put 3 1/1 goblin tokens on the battlefield. So obviously if we're going to sacrifice artifacts to synergize with Krenko, and then to synergize with that, we're obviously going to have to play cards like that, which is going to cause lots of interactions and tokens in the play. Exactly what we're after. Mana Geyser, similar to the other ones, but a bit more interesting, which is a 5-drop, 3 miscellaneous for a double red, 3 miscellaneous and double red. Add a red mana for each tap land your opponents control. So obviously in a commander game, several people are going to have several lands off in play. So we're obviously going to make sure and make the most use out of that. And then obviously the last sorcery is Vandal Blast, a commander staple, a 1 miscellaneous red, destroy target artifacts you don't control. Overload for 5, destroy all of our artifacts you don't control. Exactly what we want. We obviously want to make sure we have artifacts and interaction, and they don't. Okay, let's just go through enchantments. We've got 5 of them. We've got a Blood Moon, non-basic lands or mountains, which is obviously just a laugh because we're on the mountains, so everything's pretty much going to be mountains. We're not really going to be worried about that much. There's a few other cards that aren't exactly mountains, but never mind. Goblin Bombardment, which is a miscellaneous and a red. The sacrifice a creature. Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to any target. So obviously we're going to have tokens, we're going to have interactions, and then things destroyed by that. So we're going to try and make sure we do as much damage as possible with our tokens, as well as having a source to sacrifice them. Impact Tremors, so obviously we're going to have an ETB effect, so it's a miscellaneous and a red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control, Impact Tremors does 1 damage to each opponent. So obviously we're going to be producing a lot of goblins and try and make sure many things into play, and we can do as much damage as possible. Shared Animosity, which is a 3-drop, which enchantment, whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets a +1/+0 until the turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. Obviously, we're going to be running purely goblins, so we're going to get the most out of that interaction, especially as we're going to make tokens, they're swinging, they're all the same type. It's just exactly what you're after. One last one is Spiteful Banditry, which is an X double red, which reads, whenever a Spiteful Banditry enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to each creature. Whenever one or more creatures your opponents die, create a treasure token. This ability only trackers once each turn, which it'd be great if it happened every interaction, every death. But you know, sometimes it's not gonna. It's just gonna have a point where it just kills one, but we still get a treasure out of it. So that's pretty solid for what we want. Okay, we'll go for our instants. We have 7 of them. We have Battle Hymn, which is miscellaneous in a red. Instant, add a red mana for each creature you control. So obviously we're going to have as many creatures as possible with a token strategy to try and utilize that as best as possible. So yeah, we want mana from that. A Blightstone Ritual, which is miscellaneous, a red, add red mana to your pool for each goblin in play. Obviously you're going to have a lot of goblins out. That's another one for red source, possibly going on my storm camp. Great stuff. Bit of removal, a Chaos War, 2 miscellaneous in a red. Instant, the owner of target permanent shuffles it into the library and reveals the top card of the library. If it's a permanent card, you put it on the battlefield. So obviously we might do that as well, try and remove some. Say someone's trying to kill one of our creatures and we want to get as much usefulness out of it. We could even charge our own stuff with Chaos Warp. Great bit of removal, also a great bit of utility. Great all-rounder card. Works great because we're in red and we'll get as much use out of it. Standard 1-drop instant lightning bolt, 3 damage to a creature or player. What's to argue with that? We're running red, why not? A Pyratic Ritual, which is a miscellaneous in a red, add 3 mana to your mana pool. So obviously with our storm camp we're trying to portray as much spells and mana in the pool as possible. So cards like this are pretty much the bread and butter of these sort of things. So we're really trying to aim for the storm point. A Seething Song does as similar as the Pyratic Ritual, but it's a little bit more expensive. So it's a 3-drop, adds 5 mana to your mana pool, instant. Nothing more to be said really, other than how great it is for Storm and just red filling cards. A Tibolt's Trickery, another little bit more interesting one. A miscellaneous in red, counter target spell. Choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards and then exiles from the top of the library until they reveal exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They may cast the spell without playing its mana cost, and they put all the exiled cards on the bottom of the library in a random order. Obviously, we're just going to counter our own spell and try and get as much usefulness out of that, of course. Then, you know, you counter one of our 1-drops and get a 4-drop. Can't really argue. Great little bit of interaction. Sometimes you don't really want to counter your own spells, but with that spell, it particularly helps to do so. Let's go for our artifacts. We've got 19 of them. So, your standard mana rocks, we've got an Arcane Signet. 2-drop artifact, tap it, any colour, mana commander's identity, which is going to be red. Coat of Arms, which is a 5-drop. Each creature gets a +1/+1 on the battlefield that shares at least a creature type with it. So obviously we're going to probably run loads of goblins, and that's just going to make that somewhat silly. A Collector's Vault, which is a 2-drop artifact, which has pay 2, tap it, draw a card, then discard a card, and then create a treasure token. Why not? Why not? Great stuff. A Diamond Pickaxe, which is a red drop for an indestructible piece of equipment that, when equipped, gives a +1/+1. It gives a +1/+1, and whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. Equip for 2. Solid. Hazardous Monument, 3 miscellaneous. Red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast a red spell, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Can't argue that. All the monuments are really good. That was quite interesting. A Heraldic Banner, which is 3 miscellaneous for an artifact. It's in its battlefield, choose a colour. Creatures of the chosen colour. Creatures you control of the chosen colour get a +1/+0, and you can tap it, add mana of the chosen colour. So another rock and a buff. A Lightning Greaves for a weak commander and other sort of impactful pieces. 2 miscellaneous for an equipment that gives Shroud and Haste, equipped for 0. Mana Vault, 1-drop that taps for 4 mana. No, 3 mana. Then you have to pay 4 in your upkeep to untap it, or it deals 1 damage to you. Great for a little burst of mana. A Noble's Purse, which is 2-drop artifact, enters the battlefield tapped with 3 coin counters on it. And then you can remove a coin counter on it and you produce a treasure token. Great stuff. A Paratrail Seal, or a Patrail Seal. 3-drop. It says tap it, add 1 mana of any colour, and you can pay 1 and untap target legend you control as you tap it. Fire Exalter, one of my favourites, normally seems to be quite good in most things. It's a 3-drop which has the ability to sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any colour. A Prize Statue, 2 miscellaneous. Enters the battlefield if it's put in the graveyard, create a treasure. Enters the battlefield or is put in the graveyard, create a treasure token. So ETB, treasure token, destroy it, art sacrifice, treasure token. Nothing to argue about now. A Ruby Medallion, which is a 2 miscellaneous, and red spells cost 1 less to cast. Can't really argue with medallions, they're really good. Skull Clamp to get as much usefulness out of those goblin tokens as possible. A 1-drop, which gives something a +1/+0, +1 plus -1. Whenever the creature dies, draw 2 cards, equip for 1. So yeah, you're going to put that on your goblin tokens, try and get value out of sacrificing tokens and getting card draw. A 1-drop Soul Ring, we all know what a Soul Ring does, but just for obviously point, we're going to say it's a 1-drop, tap it, produce 2 colours. The Sting, the Glinting Dagger, 2 miscellaneous, and has the equipped creature gets a +1/+1 and has haste. At the beginning of each combat, untap equipped creature. Equipped creature has first strike as long as it's blocking or blocked by a goblin token or orc, which is more amusing because we're using goblins, but it's that untapping them at every combat. So you get to untap it every combat. So imagine obviously a Krenko doing its Krenko thing and then untapping and making more. Good stuff. A Swift Boots, fundamentally the same as the Lightning Greaves, but a little bit more expensive, but it gives hexproof and haste with equip for 1 rather than 0, because Shroud is great, but the problem with Shroud is that you can't target your stuff, and you might want to target it with some buffs or boons or whatnot. One of my favourite ones as well, a Tyrian Soulcraver, a miscellaneous with 2 to equip. Equipped creature has vigilance. Whenever an artifact or creature is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter. Put a +1/+1. Put a +1/+1 counter. Put a +1/+1 counter on. Yeah, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature as the artifact or creature leaves the battlefield. Great stuff. So you can make Krenko or whatnot. Massive. A Treasure Map, which is 2 miscellaneous, 1, tap it, scry 1, put a landmark counter on it. If it has 3 landmark counters, flip it over, it becomes a land, and you get 3 treasure tokens, and you can sacrifice a treasure token to draw a card. Great stuff. Right, that's all artifacts. Ooh, bit of a mouthful there. Okay, let's go through the pièce de résistance. The creatures. We are running 29 of them. Let's just go through them. Alchemy Manufacturer, so it's 3 miscellaneous for a 1/3. If you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, create all of them. Great stuff. If you're producing anything, you kind of want to get all usefulness out of that. And the Breaches Eager Pilferer, 3-drop for a 3/3. First strike, whenever has the ability, whenever a pirate you control attacks, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, create a treasure token, put target creature can't block this turn, exile top card of the library, you play this turn. What are you going on about? It's a 3/3 first striking goblin. Crime Novelist, as we talked about before, a 3-drop for a 1/3. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Crime Novelist and add a red mana. So obviously sacrificing red mana for donating treasures. We're obviously going to make sure we can get as much red mana and our storm count as well regarding that. And the guy I talked about as well, one of the best cards that I think, generally speaking, that should be run in every red deck if you can get away with it. A Darkside Extortionist, a miscellaneous and a red for a 1/2. As ETB trigger, it says create X treasure tokens where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. So that can get insane. And that's probably why it's a very well sought after card and very useful in any red deck, like I said earlier. Enterprising Scallywag, a miscellaneous and a red for a 2/2. At the beginning of your end step, if you descend this turn, create a treasure token. Descending is a permanent is put into your graveyard from anywhere. So even a treasure token is permanent. So any treasure token you sacrifice does go to the graveyard and does sacrifice itself and exile itself when it hits the graveyard. However, the trigger of that happening does help us for the Scallywag. A Goblin Chieftain. It is one of the lords for goblins, a miscellaneous double red. For a 2/2, haste. All of goblins get a +1/+1 control and gain haste. We want haste, we want a smack, we want to have lots of goblins. That's what we want. The next one is a Goblin Engineer, which is a miscellaneous and a red for a 1/2. When the enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact, put in your graveyard, and shuffle your library. And then you have the ability to pay a red, sacrifice an artifact, return target artifact with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So we're going to have graveyard shenanigans as well as Goblin shenanigans. Next one is the Goblin King, a miscellaneous double red for a 2/2. It says all goblins gain a +1/+1 and mountain walk. Yeah. Nothing to argue about. You don't want another lord. Goblin Matron, which is a 2 miscellaneous and a red for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a goblin card, reveal that, put in your hand, and shuffle your library. So, a tutor card for goblins that is also itself a goblin. Can't argue with that. A Goblin Rabblemaster, which is 2 miscellaneous and a red for a 2/2. Other goblins you control have haste. Sorry, what am I talking about haste? All other goblins you control attack each turn if able. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, put a red 1/1 creature goblin 1/1 goblin creature token with haste on the battlefield. Whenever this attacks, it gets a +1/+0 into end of turn for each other attacking goblin. So we're going to be attacking all goblins, especially if he's out. He kind of forces us to attack, but why wouldn't we? We're trying to make board supremacy and swing bullets at goblins and just kill all our opponents as quick as possible. A Goblin Recruiter, miscellaneous and a red for a 1/1. It comes into play. You set your library for any number of goblin cards, reveal those cards to all players, shuffle your library, and put those cards on top of the library in any order. So it's similar to your vampiric tutors or whatnot, but obviously it's many goblins as you want, and it's a goblin itself. Can't argue with goblin tutors and goblin in a way. A Goblin Trash Master, which is a 2 miscellaneous and double red for a 3/3. Other goblins you control get a +1/+1. Sacrifice goblin, destroy target artifact. We're going to have tokens, we're going to sack stuff, we're going to kill things. Goblin War Chief, which is similar to the other chieftain. But what this one does is a 1 miscellaneous double red. Goblin spells cost 1 less to cast, and goblins you control have haste. So haste and less cast cost. Can't argue with that. Great stuff. A Goblin Welder, which is a red for a 1/1, has a tap ability. It says choose target artifact a player controls and target artifact in player's graveyard. If both targets are still legal as this game ability resolves, that player sacrifices the artifact and returns the artifact to the battlefield. So there's a really impactful artifact that's probably whipping your ass that you want to obviously remove. You're going to obviously sacrifice a treasure or sort them to have something less impactful in the bin back, especially if it's something that's causing like one of the artifacts that allow you to play a spell for 0. You obviously want to be getting rid of that as quick as possible. Okay, so we've got Hedron Detonator, which is a 2 miscellaneous and a red for a 3/3. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, Hedron Detonator deals 1 damage to target opponent, and it has a tap ability. It says sacrifice 2 artifacts, exile top card of your library, and you play the card this turn. Now I'll play this card, exile stuff, grand old stuff. Now the Lord here, now Hobgoblin Bandit Lord, miscellaneous double red for a 2/3. Other goblins you control get a +1/+1. Has the red tap ability. Hobgoblin Bandit Lord deals damage equal to the number of goblins at the end of the battlefield you control on this turn to any target. So yeah, we've got a lot of goblins into the battlefield this turn. We could pop a player. Seriously, if we manage to get that off, that could seriously pop a player. We're going to be quite aggressive with that. Okay, next one is Impulsive Pilferer for a red for a 1/1. Impulsive Pilferer dies, create a treasure token. It also has the Encore ability, which is 3 miscellaneous and 4. Exile this from your graveyard for each opponent. Create a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn is able and gains haste. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice it. Activates on the sorcery. So ETBs, it dies, you get treasure token, you force it to Encore, you get treasure tokens for all your opponents, you get more treasure tokens. And it exiles. Nothing to argue at, treasure tokens. What do you want? Krenko Mob Boss. 2 miscellaneous and a double red for a 3/3. Tap ability. It says create X 1/1 red goblin tokens where X is the number of goblins in control. Says what it says, does what it does. Okay, another Krenko here. Krenko Tin Street Kingpin. 2 miscellaneous and red for a 1/2. Whenever Krenko Tin Street Kingpin attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then create a number of red goblin tokens equal to its power of Krenko on the battlefield. So we're going tokens, we're going to go Krenko. And all the different Krenkos in play don't cause them to die from Legendary Rule. Though it's the same guy, but, you know, he's obviously got different prints. So otherwise we'll be a bit fluffed there. Next one is a Legion War Boss, which is 2 miscellaneous and a red for a 2/2 as Mentor. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, create a red 1/1 Goblin creature token that gains haste until end of turn and attacks this turn as able. And how Mentor works is this creature has a higher power than something else and it swings with it. The lower creature gets a +1/+1 counter equal to the less of the power. Well, no, like say a 2 power attacks, then a 1 power attacks is going to be a 2/2. 3 power and sword. It kind of like accumulates itself because, like say, Mentor is a decent mechanic, but it wasn't really played out that much. Okay, a Moriah Marauder, double red for a 1/1 double striker. Whenever a goblin or orc you control deals combat damage to the player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Obviously, it's a double striking 2/2 1/1 goblin, so got to include it, so you get to cast stuff at the top of your library. Next one is a Pashilik Mons, 2 miscellaneous and a red for a 2/2. Whenever Pashilik Mons or another goblin you control dies, Pashilik Mons deals 1 damage to any target. And it has the static ability of 3 miscellaneous and a red, sacrifice a goblin, create 2 red goblins. So sack a goblin, create 2 red goblins. So sacrifice a goblin, make more goblins, ping them. Be great stuff. A Runveld Horde Master, miscellaneous and a red for a 1/1. Other goblins you control get a +1/+1. Whenever the Horde Master or another goblin you control dies, exile top card of your library. If the goblin card, you may cast this card until the end of your next turn. Which is good. So if it dies, we're going to get more value out of that. That's what we're after. And the next one is a Cyrodiil Avenger, miscellaneous and a red for a 1/1. First strike trample. Whenever Cyrodiil Avenger attacks, it gets a +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts your opponents control. Whenever an artifact opponents control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to that player. So we're going for ping effect stuff. Next one is a Siege Gank Commander, which is a 5-drop, 3 miscellaneous and double red for a 2/2, which enters the battlefield. You get 3 1/1 goblins with it, and he also has a sub ability that says miscellaneous and red, sacrifice a goblin, deal 2 damage to any target. He's a house. He's a house for his cast cost. He might be weak, but he lets all your other goblins basically become shocks. And can't argue with that. Next one, a Skirk Prospector, which is a red 1/1 sacrifice a goblin, gain red mana. So we're going to make a goblin, sack a goblin, make a goblin, sack a goblin, make a goblin, sack a goblin. Basically cost that chain point to kick off and to make sure as much we probably do with our storm count, or just get out all our goblins out with haste and just smash face. Next one is Squee Dubious Monarch, which is 2 miscellaneous and red for 2/2 haster. When this attacks, create a 1/1 goblin token that's tapped and attacking. You may cast Squee the Dubious Monarch from your graveyard by paying 4, so 3 miscellaneous and a red, and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard rather than paying its mana cost. So yeah, so you could either pay the 4 or you could exile 2 cards. Exile 4. Yeah, I'd probably pay the 4. Anyway, the next one is the Treasure Nabber, which is 2 miscellaneous and a red for a 3/2. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact from mana, gain control of that artifact until the end of the next turn. So yeah, they're tapping their Soul Ring, you're getting it. They tap the Signet, you're getting it. But then the amusing thing is some of the other cards we've got going on, we just sack their artifacts. We get it, they tap it once, we use it once and then sack it. It's totally what we're after. And the last one is a Willy Goblin, which is 2 double red for a 1/1. When Willy Goblin enters the battlefield and create a colourless treasure artifact with tap this, add 1 mana of any colour. So ETBs, you get a treasure token. It's kind of what we're after regarding this. We're going to obviously make as much treasures and interactions regarding as possible. But let's just start with, let's just go on with the last of it, the lands. We're running 30 of them. We'll just go through them. We've got the Castle of Emberbreth, which enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a mountain. We're going to have mountains. It's tap it for red, and you can pay a miscellaneous and a red and tap it. Creatures you control get a +1/+0 until end of turn. A Cavern of Souls, you're going to obviously name goblins. Enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, add 1 mana of any colour, or 1 mana or miscellaneous for any spell that isn't a creature spell that we're trying to obviously cast. You tap that for red, you have the creature type can't be countered. So we're enjoying the can't be countered point there. Next one is the Command Beacon, which is tap it for colourless. Sacrifice Command Beacon, put your commander into your hand from the command zone. Say if our commander's died so many times, this is useful and impactful. Otherwise, it's one of those lands that you use for situational things. It's not exactly the best, but not exactly the worst. Next one is Den of the Bugbear. If you control 2 or more other lands, Den of the Bugbear enters with tapped. Otherwise, you tap it for red, or you can pay 4. Until end of turn, it becomes a 3/2 goblin with, whenever this attacks, create a 1/1 goblin token that's tapped and attacking. It's still a land. Next one is Great Furnace, which is an artifact land, which is just tap it, get a red. And next one we're going to have is Mines of Mora. Mines of Mora enters the battlefield tapped, unless you control a legendary creature. We have tap it for red, and 4, exile 3 cards from your graveyard, create 2 treasure tokens. Then we have 17 mountains. Makes sense, we're running mountains. Next one is Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, which is a legendary land, which is tap it for miscellaneous, or you pay 2, tap it, choose a colour, add a mana amount of that colour equal to the devotion cost of your colour. Devotions are the pips on your cards. So yeah, if we've got a lot of goblin stuff out, we can make a lot of mana really quick, and we can obviously help for that storm count. And the next one is obviously it's a commander staple, a Rogue's Passage, which is tap it for miscellaneous, or pay 4, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Next one, a Sandstone Needle. Sandstone Needle enters battlefield with 2 depletion counters on it. Remove a depletion counter from it, you add 2 red mana to your mana pool. If there are no depletion counters on it, sacrifice it. I would quite like these ones where you tap it, you get 2. So early on, tapping it 2, but we're obviously going to have a lot of helpfulness for like casting our stuff as quick as possible. So that's kind of what we want. We want stuff, even if it sacks itself, we want to get the mana quick. Get the quick mana, get the stuff out. Next one is Microsense Gardens, which is a land of a sphere. Tap it for miscellaneous. You pay 1. You can add it 1 mana of any color, and you can pay X. It becomes Microsense Gardens becomes a copy of target non-artifact creature you control with value of X. Which is pretty cool. Next one is a Treasure Vault, which is an artifact land. It is a technical artifact land. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can pay XX, sacrifice it, and create X treasure tokens. So obviously we're going to have lots of treasure tokens there. Next one is Urza Saga, which is a Saga land, which has the ability 1, you tap for colors. 2, you can create a 1/1, a 0/0 colorless artifact token. It gets a +1/+1 for each other artifact you control. And it's 3, you get to it sacks itself, but you search your library for a 0 to 1 cost artifact and put it on the battlefield and shuffle. And the last one, a Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. Obviously, we're going to use red lands for most of the time, but we're obviously going to get as much use out this of Valakut, which is really cool. Valakut enters the battlefield tapped. Whenever a mountain enters the battlefield on your control, if you control at least 5 or more of the mountains, you make have Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, through 3 damage to creature or player. Tap it for red mana. So yeah, we're obviously trying to be as aggressive as humanly possible with as cheap as spells as we can. Obviously, we're not going to be pushing the envelope for trying to cast expensive stuff. We want to try and combo off, or basically storm off, with as many cards as humanly possible and create a massive goblin board state, which is exactly what we're after. A goblin board state, yeah, totally want to wipe out the field and basically cause a goblin onslaught. For all of those cards, if you're going to do metrics regarding that, that was about $615 US diddly dollars, right? Obviously, I'm not going to look up how much that costs in euros or pounds, but that's a fairly cheap deck for commanders going, because goblins in general are pretty cheap, but they're fairly aggressive. Great stuff like that. So if you guys have any ideas about what sort of decks we should run, or what other content should be created by the channel, feel free to comment and let me know. If you like the video and like the sort of content and you're not already a member, feel free to subscribe and like the video, share it, let your friends know, and hopefully my next video will just perk your interest as much as this one did. If not, feel free to check out any of the other videos. We do spend a fair amount of time going through deck lists and commander decks, in between casual and CDH level. But yeah, if you're interested in any particular deck or so, feel free to comment below in this video, and we'll try and get around to producing a deck regarding that. Maybe at some point in the future try and get some deck play of some of these decks as well, and how they interact. But that's all for today. My name is Dan, and I'm signing off, and hopefully everyone has a nice day out there.